I'd say welcome to this webinar. This is my first webinar with Amach, so I just want to say I'm delighted to be here and hopefully looking forward to quite a good interactive session here today, specifically around IROPs. The agenda items we're going to run through here today is we're going to do a bit of introductions. We're going to do a tiny bit about Amach. We're going to do a little bit about understanding IROPs. We're going to talk about some real life examples and how we leverage AI and LLMs. And then we're going to try and get into some enhancements around bots and implementing those bots. So without further ado, I'm going to kick off with some of the introductions. I'll go first. John Power. I've been delivering software for the last 25 years around the world and came into Amach only about 3-4 months ago, and I'm leading up the product side of things here. I'd also like now to introduce Moni from AWS.
Hey, thanks, John. Hello, everyone. My name is Moni Panchavadi. I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm the worldwide partner solution leader for travel and hospitality at AWS. What that means is I work with partners like Amach and build solutions specifically directed at travel and hospitality customers of AWS. Excited to be here. Look forward to a lively discussion.
Thank you very much, Moni. Victor, if you'd like to introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, John. Hi, everyone. My name is Victor Ceaus, and I've been a software engineering manager in Amach for a while now. My focus area is RPA, and I've been part of this whole ecosystem and journey for more than 8 years now. So if I do a bit of math there, I kind of started right when this one was still an emergent technology there. It was still in its infancy, so it was interesting to see how it has evolved throughout the years. Worked for a number of companies, number of departments, but for the past couple of years, I've been focusing really on the airline industry and seeing how we can leverage on this technology to help as much as we can. Besides this, I also have a bit of a background in Lean Six Sigma, so I'm always an advocate of streamlining, standardizing, leaning out processes. Before we jump into automation, there's a whole ton of things that we can talk about this. But in a nutshell, that would be my background. Happy to be part of this conversation. Looking forward to share lots of RPA nuggets of wisdom with the whole audience here.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Victor. Let me say as well, Victor is sitting in a very, very hot apartment at the moment. It's about 39 degrees outside, and it's about 32 in his apartment. So thank you very much for making the effort in getting here, Victor. All right.
Happy to John. Stay hydrated.
Just a little bit about Amach. So we're a digital aviation cloud services company, right? We're based out of Dublin. We've got about 350 people worldwide. We are an AWS partner. We've done over 1,000 AWS migrations and optimizations, and very much cloud native and focusing on scalable, flexible solutions within the airline industry. And this has been a huge draw for me coming into the company. There's lots of really exciting stuff happening in Amach. So getting down to the nuts and bolts of the actual webinar itself, a very broad level definition in case people aren't fully aware of what IROPs is. It refers to any event that disrupts normal airline operations. That could be weather, it could be technical issues, it could be other unexpected incidents that might have occurred. Okay, so it's quite a broad church in relation to the definition of it. And interestingly, some of the dry run sessions that we did, Moni picked up some really good stats. So I think it might be no harm starting there in relation to why is IROPs critical and a critical issue for airlines. Moni?
Yeah, thanks, John. So I've been a lifelong airline expert. I worked 25 plus years in airlines. So this stuff is really interesting. So I dig up some data. So one study showed that an airline spends 8% of their revenue on IROPs. So I looked at the worldwide airline revenue is 900 billion. So if you translate that into how much worldwide airlines spend on IROPs, that is 72 billion. It's no small amount. And every IROP every disruption that an airline avoid is adding directly to the airline's profit. So let's look at an example of British Airways. I mean, an airline of size of British Airways by this stat spends approximately 1.2 billion pounds on IROPs. For an airline of Delta size, is 4.4 billion on IROPs. So imagine if we can reduce IROPs by 10%, that's money they don't have to go sell. It's adding directly to an airline's profit. That's why IROPs and avoiding IROPs and reducing IROPs is important for airlines.
And you could probably add to that too, just around the regulations and legal obligations that are required around IROPs. And I'm thinking about EU 261 that specifically enforces compensation and refunds. So not only is it a cost associated to that, there's a regulation obligation to making sure that you are in line with what the actual law says itself. And Victor, what I want to do is I want to turn to you now, if you don't mind, and maybe if you could just touch upon some of the problems, the real life problems that we've been reactive to date, how we've solved them from an RPA point of view, and then maybe touch upon how we can be proactive in the future, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, sure. Might touch upon a few subjects that were mentioned in the previous webinar as well, but you know, people were right in saying there are some things that we can manage and we can prepare for. There is another set of situations that can happen that are outside of our control. So, you know, of course, we're going to do our best to mitigate any risks and on everything that's happening there. But what we've seen is, despite all of these preparations, you can still have situations that significantly impact your contact center. And among the huge number of areas we've seen in airline companies, we've seen the contact center being one of the most impacted one in a situation of kind of big disruptions. And I'm saying hundreds of flights being canceled, not your business as usual. You know, we have to cancel a couple of flights here and there to optimize the schedule. I'm talking about hundreds of flights being canceled. As you can imagine, all of that one creates a huge backlog, creates a huge pressure on all of the contact center, on the contact center agents. And we've actually got to study that whole ecosystem for a while now. And it got us thinking, like we're mentioning, that there are some things that, you know, we can handle proactively out of this whole situation just to, well, protect the time of the contact center agents as well. We want them to focus on the activities that require a human touch, whereas the other activities that can be automated, by all means, we want to leverage on technology for the likes of robotic process automation, you know, to handle them. And just some examples of reactive, in a way, solutions that we have developed. This is really touching upon what you mentioned there. Refunds, all types of refunds. I'm talking about tax refunds, talking about voucher refunds, but also refunding to the original form of payment that was used most often than not being a credit card, right? And we've seen those having huge volumes, business as usual. But when you have one of those scenarios that I mentioned previously, hundreds of flights being canceled, that's where, well, frankly put, it became unmanageable. Having more people trying to help with that process, there was a point up until it wasn't really scalable anymore. And that's where we studied the processes a bit. And by no means, I'm not saying refund processes are simple to automate. We've seen some quite challenging situations there. But we did manage after a while to automate a huge number of these refund requests coming in. You know, and this is where something that I would be calling a low-hanging fruit. Refunds and EU261 compensations and claims, I'd say this is the big focus in case disruption happens. You know, realistically, and this is something I'm quite open about it with all of our clients, is that there are some situations where you cannot automate 100% of the situations. There will be some scenarios, and we've seen with the combinations that can happen between passenger types, form of payment being used, long haul and short haul. You have so many variations that at some point you're reaching the law of diminishing returns. So what we tend to do usually, John, is focus on the 80%. You know, and you would be surprised, 80% out of a couple of thousand requests that are coming in case of a disruption, It's quite impactful, and it's allowing the contact center agents to focus on other more pressing activities.
So just on that, Victor, again, I'm looking for approximates here around time frames. So let's say if you did have an example where flights were cancelled and prior would have taken 3, 4, 5 weeks, right, to be able to process a lot of these refunds. What's the sort of percentage reduction have we seen in relation to the automation of refunds? Is it 50%, 60%? It's not all of a sudden 6 weeks anymore. It's down to a week, 2 weeks. What are we seeing there?
We've seen a big reduction there. I wouldn't be able to say accurately what the percentage is, but one of the highlights and benefits of RPA is that it's very scalable.
Yeah.
And this is where, in some recent situations that we had, we just increased the number of EC2 instances being used, as opposed to 3 or 4 instances that we were using for parallel processing. For example, we scaled up to 10 concurrent licenses and EC2s being used, and that allowed us to drastically scale up the processing rate there. So I'd say depending on the infrastructure there, if we have a backlog of months, weeks, we could even maybe solve it within a couple of hours.
Yeah.
That's how powerful this whole technology is in the right hands with the right infrastructure.
Yeah, so that's interesting. And again, I was looking for a kind of an approximate. If you're looking at a number of weeks, 5, 6 weeks down to a couple of hours, you could be looking at 90 odd plus improvement in efficiency in relation to that. Now, in relation to the proactivity, Victor, so we've talked about the reactiveness of looking at how we solve these refunds. Proactive, how do we get ahead of this, Victor?
Well, I mentioned this a bit before in passing, but we do want to think proactively about how we can manage the time of how we can manage people's time in these situations. And I can talk about contact center at length, but I do want to mention an example outside of contact center area, which is operations, right? In case of emergent, or in case of an highly critical disruption there, hundreds of flights, you do have the folks running the operation side of things. You have them working from minute to minute to handle everything, and what we've seen throughout our years of experience is that the people that should be out there managing the crisis, being the leaders, kind of rallying everybody, being there to make sure everything is in place. Those people, you would be surprised, but they are stuck working with Excel and doing manual rostering. So that's where I'd say taking our lessons from the reactivity and how disruption can be managed in a reactive way, we wanted to turn the tables there and say, well, how can we do something that in this entire chain of dominoes, and I'm kind of envisioning all of the sub-processes happening there to make sure a plane leaves on time, right?
Yeah.
If one of those sub-processes fails due to a reason, how can we leverage on RPA there to make sure that the other pieces of the domino don't tumble over, leading to a disruption? And this is where one of the rules, I'd say, with RPA is that it has to be guided by volumes. But we've seen with the airline industry that is no longer the main criteria. But having RPA act as an insurance policy, having RPA be there as a fail-safe, that if something happens, you can bet that your leaders are going to be there leading. They're not going to be out there doing manual processing.
Yeah.
That's where there's a huge value in, and we're trying to maximize that one as much as possible nowadays.
I know we talked about this yesterday in the dry run. This example you're looking at here, this is handling rebookings, is it? So setting up an RPA to handle the likes of rebookings when cancelled flights have happened, is it?
This is more about the rostering, so making sure we have the right crew, we have the right people there to manage the whole thing. But it's also related to rebookings as well. And what we've seen is that you do have a heads up when you need to do these rebookings and handle them. But if the volume coming in is more than the offer, the people that can help you process those, you're going to reach a point where, you know, even though you could have been proactive about it and solved it, and it didn't turn into a disruption, it reached to the tipping point where it transformed into a disruption.
Of course. So I get a snowballing effect here.
Exactly.
And what I'm hearing here is that RPA allows us in certain scenarios to free up key people to be able to work on more strategic planning to ensure that everything gets back on track again. But the key here has to be volume-based. If it's volume-based transactions, RPA comes into its own to be able to free those people up, to be able to work on stuff that can start clearing the backlog. And it has to be based on that image and it's understanding process here that if you don't get in front of the snowball, it will grow. And it'll get bigger and bigger in relation to that.
Exactly.
Moni, can I jump back to you here now a bit, specifically around how can airlines reduce IROPs with AWS?
Yeah. So I'm going to take a step back from what Victor just explained. Amach is a excellent AWS partner. You probably have heard this. At AWS, we say security is our job zero. So when you use AWS, you're getting an industry-leading secure product. So if I take that analogy and apply that here, a job zero for IROPS reduction is having a clean data. So what does that mean? Getting clean data on aircraft operations, the data from the Boeings, the Airbus, how the aircraft is functioning. That's one. We have to have good data. We need to have good data on customers. Who is our customer? What are their preferences? What are their booking history? What is their current booking, the booking data? We need to have those clean data, right? Then to effectively reduce disruptions and manage disruptions, we just have to look beyond just the flight segment. I mean, airlines is interested in just the flight segments. I mean, take the customer from point A to point B. That's how airlines function. But if you have to elevate the customer experience, look beyond that. Hey, door to door. What is the passenger journey from their door to the destination? If you can understand that, so that is going beyond the airline data. Are they taking an Uber? Where are they staying? What are their preferences? Do they like Starbucks? Things like that. So the more that you can understand the data, the better you can serve the customer. So let me talk a little bit about how you can build a good data strategy for an airline using AWS. So we provide variety of services. If you're looking at streaming the data, we have services like Kinesis. We have managed Kafka service where you can get the stream of data coming from multiple sources and build this unified data. We have that service. And we have purpose-built services like Redshift for data warehousing and multiple purpose-built data stores. Maybe it's relational database, unstructured database. You have a variety of services that you can use on that front. And I know Victor used in our previous discussions, Victor mentioned a lot of compute services. So we need to do, once we decide how do we rebook a passenger, reaccommodate a passenger, there's multiple steps that you need to do that. You have a variety of compute services. We also have step functions where we have sequence of events to do. So you can sequence that event. So you get a lot of options to do that from AWS services that you can choose from. When I talked about understanding the end-to-end journey, right? So for that, you have to understand data from your partners. I'm Delta Airlines, I'm working with Hyatt or Hilton. So we don't want to share their personal data, but understand, hey, I have this passenger. I know they are staying at a hotel. Can you share the booking information? You don't have to give me the personally identified information, but just give me a booking information. So if a disruption happens, I can let you know, hey, this passenger who is a loyalty passenger for me and a loyalty passenger for you is going to be delayed coming to check in at your hotel. Can we work together to make sure that they have a better experience in case of a disruption? So having that clean data is job zero, step zero, to make everything that Victor talked about to happen seamlessly.
I fully agree with you, Moni, there. And I remember looking at a process, refund process, talked about it a few minutes before that. We've seen how it behaved with clean data. So validations happening there, making sure that the booking actually exists. The passenger is actually on that booking, and it's an existing booking in our systems, the client systems, versus unstructured data, no validation. And you kind of know the rule. If you have less than ideal input, you're going to have less than ideal output as well. So fully agree with you. Data is the key there, really. And it also helped us to navigate and decide where to focus on delivering these products. Because at the end of the day, we have developed each of these RPAs as products. We have gained data through using them, and we have used that data to decide where do we take that product next.
Yeah,
it's really interesting because I was on a call with a Central European airline there during last week, and their big issue was getting clean information from hotels to allow them to be able to either proactively rebook based on the European regulation obligations around that. That was their biggest challenge, was to do exactly that, what we've just said. So it's really good that I'm hearing an overlap between what you've just said there, Moni, and then all the way down into obviously Victor's conversations around that clean data side of things. But using this data, let's put it into reality here. What sort of problems can we solve? We talked about the hotel here, Moni. What else have we got?
Yeah, so thank you for bringing that, because I didn't answer your question. I just set it up to answer that question. Okay, so now that we have this clean data, how can we solve the problem for airlines? There are multiple things that we can do. Let's start with prevention, right? Predictive maintenance. So we have this data from aircrafts and history of maintenance that the airlines do for the aircraft. Now, how can we predict what's the right time to maintain the aircraft? What's the right things to do? So there's a lot of work happening in the industry to use this data to do predictive maintenance and maintain the aircraft, so the breakdowns happen very rarely. So that's one area where this data can help avoid disruptions. Then weather data. We have something called Amazon Data Exchange. So companies like yourself and airlines can buy this data, weather data, feed that into, as I said, stream that into your systems and plan around the weather disruption. So that's another way we can avoid this. Then Victor talked about rebookings. So once a disruption happens, we know the passenger preference, not just rebook on the next available ones. Use that preference to give them an option, multiple options. We have now, we have their history, we have their booking data, we have their preference. Give them multiple options as per their preference. So these are some ways we can help with this disruptions using this data.
And interesting, again, just to bring it back to reality, we're looking at fuel efficiency use cases, and we're talking about bringing in weather data in here because the fuel efficiency could be determined by how strong, for example, the winds are in a particular area, which may actually change a popular route in a different direction to avoid those winds and therefore bring the fuel efficiency down. So that data exchange is, and the cleanliness and accuracy of that data exchange is really important. I have a quick question coming in here at the moment, and maybe Victor, this is one into you, buddy. It's how quick and easy is it to adapt rules for RPA? From your past experience, sometimes these rules need to adapt to meet a specific incident. How easy?
Well, we've seen throughout the years, I've seen multiple situations. I've seen changes happening in the process proactively. So we know the fare eligibility rules are changing for voucher refunds, for example, right? And instead of fare X, Y, and Z, now it has to be the other way for the person to be eligible. That one is a simple configuration change. It's so we are fans of the mantra, We want to work smart, and this is where we leverage as much as we can on configuration files, such as these, right? So this is handled proactively, simple change. When it's an incident and we need to be quick on our feet, that's where, and again, I've seen it throughout the years, the people that are building these solutions, they are becoming experts on that specific process. As time is progressing, you would be surprised, but they unofficially become the new subject matter experts on those processes, so they have the whole thing in their head, and they can easily say, okay, we're changing this, we're tweaking that one. And that's the beauty with RPA. We have, and it has grown so much throughout the years to be more than just robotic process automation. It's automated testing nowadays. It's being able to do a full regression within a couple of minutes to make sure that that simple change that you've done did not negatively impact 200 scenarios that you have in that specific process. So leveraging a bit on this perk that RPA has, it is a simple change to do. And we've even seen situations where we had to create sort of a branching path, outside of those 200 scenarios that we had already at play. We had to construct a new one and say, look, if this incident is happening, or you see this unique combination of characters within the booking information, this is actually automatically entitled to a voucher, for example.
Very good.
Bypassing the whole eligibility checks side of things.
Yeah, no, very good. And again, I want to bounce back to you, Moni, here in this. We know IROPs is unavoidable, right? How can airlines get the best out of IROPs? In other words, not let it go to waste. What can we learn?
Yeah. So so far we talked about automation of IROPs handling, right? Let's talk a little bit about intelligent automation. So what does that mean? We have, I don't know, how I'm sure our audience is hearing Gen AI and AI ML a lot. So there's a perfect use case where we can apply AI ML and generative AI to reduce and avoid this. So coming back to your question, we have opportunity to make this automation intelligent. What do I mean by that? So let me give you an example. My flight is coming into a gate, but the gate is already occupied. What are the best options available to avoid a delay from that? So what we can do, a lot of airlines are starting to do, is building a digital twin for their operations. So this gate is already available. What options do I have? So we have a AI ML application running, which with a trained model, and looking at this scenario and all the data that's available, and then give options. Rather than, Victor talked about the spreadsheet, rather than looking at a spreadsheet, hey, what gates are available, now this model can give you the best options to avoid a delay from that. So that's an example of airlines can do to avoid this. Then another example is, hey, I'm boarding the flight and we are running late. So this digital twin can give you options. Hey, do these steps to avoid this. So I just wanted to plug in how we can make this automation intelligent. Now, coming back to your question of what airline can do to take the best out of an IROPS. So a lot of all airlines are interested in the Net Promoter Score. How satisfied are the customer with them? Consistently taking good care of customer is very important in increasing the satisfaction. But in my opinion, how do we take care of a customer when a disruption happens? That's very key to improving Net Promoter Score as well, or customer satisfaction as well. What does this mean? As you said, IROPS is unavoidable. So when it happens, as I said before, if we know our customer well, make this frictionless for them. They don't, if we can avoid them calling a contact center, talk to someone for 30 minutes to make this. Hey, John, I know you are stranded here. Here are the options that you have available for you to book. Do you want me to go ahead and book option 1? And I know from your booking history and your preference, this looks like the best way for you to get to destination E in the best possible way. So that's making that rebooking and reaccommodation frictionless as possible, and make a pleasant experience out of this bad situation. That's one option. And not just that, be empathetic to the customer. Let your employees, your agents know, hey, we had this disruption for this passenger. Be empathetic to them. So how do you make that happen? Having, again, back to the data, you had a disruption, you are connecting in a different flight. So the flight attendant, if they know you had this bad situation and you are connecting, if we are able to pass that information in a digital way to your employees, then and train them to be empathetic and let them know, hey, I'm sorry you had a bad experience today. I hope you will be able to make your destination on time. Having that connection and enabling and empowering your employees with data will go a long way to improve customer satisfaction and your Net Promoter Score.
And I think that's really good, because we're again working with another European airline looking at the application of an AI chatbot specifically through the likes of Lex, right? So Amazon Lex to have an understanding around the conversational aspects of it, to be able to pinpoint potential knowledge-based questions that could go back to the end customer very, very fast, or certainly into the customer agent that could relay it to the end customer really, really fast. So we're already seeing a bit of that there. But I might just jump back quickly into a question here for Victor. How do you go about managing the design of a new system that can integrate human judgment and automated decision making?
Yeah, it's a good question. Normally, what we want to do, John, is handle the whole process end to end. Right? Remove the human judgment, remove the human from the loop there.
Yeah.
But we still have seen situations where even though you cannot automate the whole process, it's still worth it automating parts of it. And you'd be thinking, but how is this working with the human judgment? Who makes a decision? How does it get feed to the bot and everything? And this is where we've seen the technology evolve very much throughout the last years. And there are mechanisms through which, I'm just using the contact center example again, right? In this situation, let's say the automation would be unable to make a decision. Is this person actually eligible or not for a voucher refund? It would be sending that case to an agent. Agent makes a decision, and that decision then gets sent via API to the bots. And the bots, you would be surprised, but they would not be stuck waiting for that answer. They would be processing the other requests in the meantime. And when they get that response, that's how it all nicely integrates. So this has been developed quite a lot throughout the years. And in certain situations with certain processes, it actually makes quite a lot of sense to implement.
Okay, very cool. There's a couple of questions coming in here as well, Moni. I'm going to jump back onto you. Contact center plays a key role in IROPs. Are there any solutions from AWS in this particular space?
Absolutely. I'm glad Victor brought this contact center up. That's a key aspect of IROPs and rebooking, reaccommodation, right? A lot of calls. We have industry-leading contact center solution, Amazon Connect, and it is adopted by a lot of leading airlines to manage contact center for us. And one other thing that I will add about Amazon Connect, we all are hearing a lot about generative AI, and Victor brought up how we can automate some of these calls that the agents are getting. So the good news is Amazon Connect has integrated generative AI capabilities that you can explore. For example, someone is calling to make a rebooking and they have booked a rule. In the past, an agent has to go into the fare rule and find out what are the refund policies or what are the refund penalties for this. So now with generative AI, it can go through this fare rules and bookings and decide, find out, hey, here's a summary of your penalties or the money that you have to pay. So it will make the life of an agent easier. So to answer your question, we have Amazon Connect with generative AI capabilities to help your agent with helping customers.
And I think we can comment on that, but probably some early breaking news in relation to this piece of work that we're doing with this Southern European airline. We're already seeing trends going up, specifically around the use of Amazon Let's in relation to first call resolution and the lowering of average wait time. And in some cases, on the Amazon Connect side of things, we're rerouting calls to balance the distribution of calls hitting a call center and seeing abandonment rates going to zero. Right, that's the sort of real life examples we're seeing from that. Victor, I'm going to jump back to you. There's a question here as well. What makes a process a candidate for RPA automation, especially in the airline industry? Right, so I think they're asking here, what's the criteria before we invest money in RPA?
Well, probably 5 years ago, I would have said this is all volume driven. You should have as many cases, as much volume as possible. Nowadays, when I'm looking at RPA through these lenses of being also an insurance policy, I don't consider volumes as being such a high priority anymore. I do see, especially in this context of disruption, right? I see it being that insurance policy that helps the organization. Like it's all of these benefits that it brings to the organization, that it's 24/7 processing. It's faster than a contact center agent, most definitely. Able to work during the nights and during the weekends, so it's all fine there. No headcount limitations. Nowadays, I'd say if it touches upon this delicate space and it can cascade, it can tumble, and it can lead into a disruption, I think at the end of the day, it's worth investigating to see at least the complexity of it. Because of course you don't want to automate over complex processes. Over complex processes meaning that they mean hundreds of scenarios. It means challenge in testing, getting test data, and all of that one, right? But when the context sort of justifies it, I think it makes sense, and that's what I've seen. You used to have these kind of matrices, John. If that one is happening and you have between X and Y, then it has 100 points, and if you have 1,000 points, then it's eligible. It doesn't really work like that in an airline industry. If it helps with on-time performance, it helps with NPS, it helps with the disruption, you will be thinking to yourself, well, that it's a process that it takes a couple of hours for a person to do per week. But if you automate it, maybe that process can be run more frequently. Maybe you can actually run that every night, and that can actually generate revenue to you. Maybe you were having only one person do that process because of headcount constraints. So it's unlocking a huge potential there to take a deeper look at the processes and challenge the status quo as well. Why are we doing the things that we're doing in the way we're doing them,
So interestingly, I think in a previous life, generally you'd have to submit a business case to get anything automated. So you'd have to turn around and say, well, this is how much it's going to cost and this is how much it's going to save you. And then that could direct into the automation of a solution. But just interesting, another question's popped in here as well. I'm going to stick with you, Victor.
Yeah.
Any other use cases RPA can help on in the context of IROPs that's not necessarily refund based?
Yeah.
And so anything else there? Now I know we talked about meals and long haul flights. That's a little outside the IROPs, but if you do have an example around that, far away.
Well, I'd say EU261, big volumes there as well. And EU261 has sort of two faces to it. You have the compensation, and then you have the claims. So that's where we had to leverage on different technologies. The claims part being a bit more tricky, as we had to look at scans of receipts. So that was just, I'd say, another challenge on top that we had to overcome there. I'd say besides refunds, EU261 is the next thing out there. And then outside of EU261, and again, going back to that mindset of let's protect the time of the airline's employees, of the contact center agents, we have capability to process special meal requests, right?
Very good. Very good.
So that means instead of a contact center agent handling those simple requests, you have that one automated, done already. They don't even have to bother about it. And meals might not be such a critical example, but what about mobility assistance? To people needing, they need to board with their own wheelchair. There's also a set of regulation there, depending if it's battery powered or not. And that's where you do want to leverage as much as you can on automation. Imagine a scenario there you have a couple of flights disrupted. You have your contact center agents focused on the refunds, on the U261s, but nobody's actually processing those requests to make sure that those 10 people that need mobility assistance to get onto the airplane, that they can actually be helped at the airport.
Yeah, no, understood.
Imagine the impact that would have on the...
Yeah, that's a pretty good one, all right. I'm conscious of time. Moni, I'm going to give you the last 2.5 minutes here, buddy, right? So what I would like to know here is specifically around the AWS solutions and services for IROPs, and maybe 30 seconds at the end to tell us what's the future or where do we think it's going?
Yeah, thanks, John. I appreciate that. AWS doesn't build industry-specific solutions. In this case, for IROPs, we rely on partners like yourself to build those solutions, but we provide the building blocks. Let me talk about some of those building blocks here. We have a solution called Unified Profile for Travelers and Guests. What it does is it gets the customer data from multiple sources and gives you a single view of the customer 360. So that's a solution that will be a good solution that's applicable in this scenario. And then we talked about AI ML. We provide a wide variety of the services that you can build your AI ML application on AWS. For example, we have industry leading SageMaker. If you're building a model and you want to train that model, so SageMaker is probably the best solution out there for doing that. Then we talked about generative AI. For generative AI, we have 3 layers. We have at the bottom, we have the chips. We provide the most price performant chips for your generative AI needs. We have Trainium for training your models. We have Inferentia for inference. And at the middle, we have foundational models and tools to build generative AI applications. We have Amazon Bedrock. If you are building a generative AI applications, you can use Amazon Bedrock to choose from a variety of foundational models and build your application and have the best security as you expect from any AWS service. And on top, we have Gen AI powered applications. We talked about Amazon Connect. It has Gen AI capabilities. We also have Amazon Q for developer that increase your developers' productivity. So we have multiple options to build from. And just to summarize, we provide the building blocks and we rely on partners like Amach to build industry-specific solutions for problems like IROPs.
Perfect. You're a gentleman. I'm going to steal the last 15 seconds here. A quick question came in. We've talked everything about cost optimization. We haven't really talked about revenue generation, but just to quickly touch upon that and to tie it into some of the earlier conversations, building profiles around the customer. We call it the customer genome, right? Other people call it the one customer journey. Allows an opportunity to leverage more revenue, because the more you know about the customer, the more you can actually sell to that customer, right? So there could be opportunities here in relation to the airport experience that we could target the customer for specific sales of items that we know they are interested in, okay, in relation to that one. So there is a whole journey to go on in relation to the collation of the data profile for the customer. As I said, we're calling it the customer genome, that will then allow us to be able to have experiences that are experienced all the way through the airport, onto the plane, over the other side in relation to leaving, and then bringing that loyalty in as well. I know I'm rushing getting that last point in, but I did want to touch about the revenue generation part of it. And that's everything. We are 1 minute over. I'd like to thank everybody for the webinar here today, and especially Victor for sitting in 39 degrees heat in that office. Okay, guys, thank you very much.